continue or finalize the book of Ezekiel, chapters 46 to 48, which I've titled Understanding Prophecy. It deals with the last millennium temple of God. Now the Jews say there are 613 laws of God to be kept. I've never counted them. Many Christians are taught they were either nailed to the cross or cannot be kept, or they only have to keep the 10. Yesterday I highlighted some laws that only priests have to keep, i.e. 44 verse 18, verses 20 and 21. I did this by typing in capitals the word they. But should any of you miss the point, I am drawing attention to it today. There are no laws of God that cannot be kept. He is not foolish to give what cannot be kept, and furthermore punish transgressors for not keeping them. Not all of the 613 laws are for everyone. Some are for men, some are for women, some are for husbands, some are for animals, owners, etc. If you do not fit into that category, i.e. of having leprosy, then those would not apply to you. Similarly, in any society, not all the laws of the land apply to every individual. Some are for car owners, drivers on the road, property owners, etc. Find me a law of God that you think cannot be kept, and I should be able to show you someone can keep it. If one person can, then so can 2, 20, 200, etc. And if you or others choose not to, then that is your choice. It's not that they cannot be done. Of course, I'm not including the animal sacrifices that required the temple, as we no longer have a temple, except in the sense that we are now the temple and we have a high priest and a sacrifice. So the same system as before. The only thing is the animal sacrifice has been replaced by a better one in Messiah. So reading from Ezekiel 46 verse 1, the prince and the feast. Just going to read a couple of verses. Thus saith Yahweh, the gate of the inner court that looketh towards the east shall be shut the 6 working days. But on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. And the prince shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate without, and shall stand by the post of the gate. And the priest shall prepare his burnt offerings and his peace offerings, and he shall worship at the threshold of the gate. Then he shall go forth, but the gate shall not be shut until the evening. The evening being the end of the day, which is not midnight. That is verses 2. Now verse 3, likewise the people of the land shall worship at the door of this gate before Yahweh in the Sabbaths and the new moons. As I've said before, Sabbaths is not just a weekly one, but is also annual ones as listed in Leviticus 23. Okay, my other comments. Will you be one of those in the land then you will be keeping the 7th-day Sabbath, or not in the land. In other words, only those who get into the land will be keeping the Sabbath, as it says above, otherwise you will not be in the land. God's people do things God's way. Others are for the fire, the second death that is. Remember Leviticus 23 verse 3 and Nehemiah chapters 13 verse 19, which reads, And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set at the gates that they should not burden, so that they should no burden be brought in on that Sabbath day. So that was Nehemiah making sure that no buying or selling was done, because people from outside came trying to tempt the inhabitants by setting up shop at the gates. Isaiah 66:23, It shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring unto all flesh. Continue reading from Ezekiel chapters 46 verse 9. But Yahweh speaking again, but when the people of the land shall come before Yahweh in the solemn feast, he that entereth in by the way of the north gate to worship shall go out by the way of the south gate. And he that entereth in by the way of the south gate shall go forth by the way of the north gate. He shall not return by the way of the gate whereby he came in, but shall go forth over against it. So again, this is saying that these feasts in the new temple of Leviticus 23, will be kept. And they say, you see the feast in Leviticus 23 verse 4 onwards. Continue reading from Ezekiel 46 verse 13. Thou shalt daily prepare a burnt offering unto Yahweh of a lamb of the first year without blemish. Thou shalt prepare it every morning, and thou shalt prepare a meat offering for it every morning, the sixth part of an ephah, and the third part of an hin of oil, to temper with the fine flour, a meat offering continually by a perpetual ordinance unto Yahweh. Thus shall they prepare the lamb and the meat offering and the oil every morning for a continual burnt offering. My comment: not only is Yahweh God the same yesterday, today, and forever, and changes not, but neither does his ways. If you have kept up with the daily readings from January, you should remember God set up a system of continual daily, weekly, seventh-day, and annual feast day sacrifices, i.e. Exodus chapters 29 verse 38 reads, Now this is that which thou shalt offer upon the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. See also verses 42 and Numbers chapters 28. Numbers 28 verse 9, for example, reads, And on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs of the first year without spot, 2/10 and 2/10 deals of the flour for meat offering mingled with oil, and the drink offering thereof. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, besides the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. And in the beginning of your months ye shall offer a burnt offering unto Yahweh, 2 young bullocks and 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot, and so on. So this is why the anti-Yahweh God agents of the devil took away the sign of God's presence in the land and system in Daniel chapters 8 verse 11, which I have mentioned before, and it reads, Yea, he magnified himself, even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So daily sacrifice was a commandment of God and a sign of God being with people. God assisted his zealous people by the hands of the Maccabees to rid the land of such agents, cleansed the temple, and reinstituted the system of God after 2,300 sacrifices, which is not 2,300 days as one denomination interprets it. As there were 2 sacrifices per day, that took 1,150 days. The exact time Daniel was told it would take in Daniel 8:13 to cleanse the temple. In Daniel 8:13, Daniel asked the question, Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint, which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now the Seventh-day Adventists would teach a totally wrong interpretation of this prophecy, interpreting it to be 2,300 literal days. They then used the day for a year principle of Numbers chapters 14 verse 34, which says, after the number of the days in which ye search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall you bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and you shall know my breach of promise. Also, Ezekiel chapter 4 verse 6 is the only other place, two of the places where this principle is given, out of all the thousands of times that the word day is used in the Bible. Ezekiel 4:6. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah. 40 days I have appointed thee, each day for a year. So as I said, of the 1,250 verses and 1,422 times the word day occurs in the Old Testament, it is never used to represent a year, except in the specific two instances God directed and gave his reason.
If we actually look up the Hebrew words in the book of Daniel, where the English translation has come from, see in 8:14 it says unto 2,300 days. But that is not really the normal word for days, which is yom. We come on later on. There's two words here. One means evening and one means morning. So this means until 2,000 evening and mornings, which, as I said, that's when the sacrifices were to be done. If we go to verse 26, you actually see the word for days. So, and the vision of the evening, there's the same word here, 6153. Then 8:14, and there we have it. Then 8:14, 6153. So going back to verse 26. The evening and the morning. So again, this is the evening and the morning. And the vision concerning the evening and the morning, was what's about, will be told for true and days. So this is your word for days. So it's not 2,300 literal days as the Adventists take it to be. It's 2,300 evening and morning sacrifices. So let's go back to our study.
Not take those two specific instances and apply as and when they wish to get the result they want to make a claim of being God's replacement remnant church, i.e. their specific interpretation of Daniel 8:14. Many have similar misused scripture to try and identify themselves as God's true church, for example the Jehovah's Witnesses. I will not mention any others so as not to draw attention to them. Remember, Daniel prayed daily, two of which were at the same time as the daily sacrifices. Cornelius of Acts 10 did the same. These are not arbitrary times but of God. Psalms chapters 55 verse 17. Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. Mark chapters 15 verse 25. And it was the third hour, and they crucified him. Luke 24:44. And it was about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up the ghost. Acts 2 verse 15. Seeing it is but the third hour of the day, third of the day. So if we read the Bible with a Jewish mindset and apply their history to prophecies rather than Christian or Gentile nations, we should better understand the scriptures and arrive at the way of life God requires us to follow, and not get the wrong interpretation of prophecies. Now I am told the Bible is older than the 66 book compilation of the King Jameses, and others have the 81 to 84 books included. Books of Enoch, Esdras, Barak, 3 books of the Maccabees, etc. Those compilations are about 800 years older than the King James Version. I recommend reading or listening to them, especially the Maccabees, as that will give you the prophecy of Daniel 8:14 when the temple was cleansed. The Catholic and general Christianity would prefer you did not, but remain ignorant with Gentile interpretations of the limited 66 books. They are adequate for salvation, but not if you are going to apply Christian and Gentile history to prophecies. Okay, continuing with Ezekiel chapter 47, I'm going to start from verse 8, water flowing from the temple. Then said he unto me, These waters issue out towards the east country, and go down into the desert, and go into the sea, which being brought forth into the sea, the waters shall be healed. And it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whithersoever the rivers shall come, shall live, and there shall be a great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither, for they shall be healed, and everything shall live whither the river cometh. I have heard that an interpretation that waters shall be healed is representative of people being healed, but I leave you to make your own decision of that. Continue from verse 13, division of the land. Thus saith Yahweh God, This shall be the border whereby you shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph shall have 2 portions, and you shall inherit it, one as well as another, concerning which I lifted up mine hand to give it unto your fathers, and this land shall be unto you for an inheritance. Verse 21. So shall you divide this land unto you according to the tribes of Israel. And it shall come to pass that you shall divide it by a lot for an inheritance unto you and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall beget children among you, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. They shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourneth, there shall you give him his inheritance, saith Yahweh God. My comment, a repeat of the division of the promised land after Exodus out of Egypt. In the future, which is what Ezekiel is about, those who joined the Exodus out of Egypt, which people interpret as the world and its ways, will again get an inheritance of the eternal promised land. Note, the stranger is counted as belonging to a tribe of Israel among where they live. So with that in mind, consider this point. With Revelation chapter 7 verse 4, we see it says, And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Revelation 7 verse 9, After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all the nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. Also note, Revelation 7:4 could have said tribes of Israel rather than tribes of the children of Israel, because there is a difference. An article titled We Should All Be Israeli on www.forwardtoyahweh.com identify these children of Israel the nation rather than children of Israel the individual. Will you be in the land to get your inheritance? Remember those in the land know of and keep the 7th day Sabbath and annual feast days of Yahweh God. Leviticus 23. It was also one of the two criteria needed to get in for sinners. Revelation chapters 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Two criteria. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have a right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. Maybe those who obtained righteousness within the law did not transgress and therefore did not need the repentance in Yeshua, had a right of entry. Luke chapters 1 verse 6, which says, and they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh, blameless. So if you're blameless, you haven't sinned, obviously you don't have any sins to repent, and you do not need a forgiving by the blood of Messiah. And that's what Revelation 22:14 is talking about. Okay, on to Ezekiel chapters 48, reading from verse 1. There's a few verses. Now these are the names of the tribes from the north end of the coast of the way of Hethlon, as one goeth to Hamath, Hazarinan, the border of Damascus, northward to the coast of Hamath. For these are his sides, east and west, a portion of Dan. And it continues. I'm going to jump to verse 11. It shall be for the priests that are sanctified of the sons of Zadok, which have kept my charge, which went not astray when the children of Israel went astray after the Levites went astray. This is talking about an event in the book of Numbers when a priest of Zadok had to kill that woman who was brought into the tent of one of their people. Continue from verse 38 of chapter 40, continuing chapter 48 verse 31, the gates of the city. And the gates of the city shall be after the names of the tribes of Israel, 3 gates northward, 1 gate for Reuben, 1 gate of Judah, 1 gate of Levi. And at the east side 4,500 and 3 gates, and 1 gate for Joseph, 1 gate for Benjamin, and 1 gate for Dan. And at the south side 4,500 measures and 3 gates, 1 gate for Simeon, 1 gate for Issachar, and 1 gate for Zebulun. At the west side 4,500 with their 3 gates, 1 gate of Gad, 1 gate of Asher, and 1 gate of Naphtali. It was round about 18,000 measures, and the name of the city from that day shall be Yahweh is there, or Jehovah Shammah. My comment. Remember above, strangers and keepers of God's commandments have a right of entry. Revelation 22 verse 14. 1 Corinthians 7:18 reads, is any man called being circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing but a keeping of the commandments of God. Also compare the verses with Revelation 21:12. Reads, and had a wall great and high, and have 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Exodus chapter 17 verse 15. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. Judges 6:24. Then Gideon built an altar there unto Yahweh and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day it is yet in offering of the Abizirites. Jeremiah 3:17. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of Yahweh, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of Yahweh, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. Revelation 21:3. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God, and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. Do not let the false or ignorant preachers deceive you and cause you to lose your place, your promised crown and place in the kingdom. To be on the entry list, the book of life, is to keep God's holy days and weekly and annual one. We have now reached the end of the law. Some history and 3 major prophets, the last being Ezekiel we just read. Are you getting a better picture of God and how he thinks? What pleases him, and thus able to better discern between truth and error? What has been the constant and underlying theme? Is it not obey God and keep his commandments, especially his identified holy Sabbath days? Shalom, until tomorrow, God willing.